Ahoy mates, where in the world would you like us to ship you? I'm Cheryl Doherty of Galaxy Cruises and Tours. Welcome to Travel Talk. Today my special guest is Mark Fellner, Air Traffic Controller Specialist from Austin, Texas. Welcome aboard, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, let's just start with the basics, Mark. What is an air traffic controller?
We are the men and women that are behind the scenes, whether it be in the control tower or in the radar room, all over the country, that make sure all aircraft are safe and get to their destinations efficiently and orderly.
Perfect. And actually, who are you employed by? Who are air traffic controllers employed by?
In the United States, federal air traffic controllers are employed by the federal government under the Department of Transportation, the FAA. There are some air traffic controllers that are employed by the military, as well as contract towers have some air traffic controllers that are employed privately.
Mark, how does the U.S. system differ from international air traffic controllers?
So in the United States, most of the air traffic controllers are, like I said, military or federal or private. The other countries, like the UK and Canada, the air traffic controllers they are all private. So some of the models may differ from country to country. In Canada, they charge aircraft to use their service. So if you were to fly from here to Canada, the company that would fly the aircraft or the pilot owner would have to pay a fee for using the air traffic services over there, when we don't have that over in the United States. So we provide it free of charge, which is one of the significant differences of how they run their systems.
What do you like most about your job?
Everything changes on a day-to-day basis. There's not a lot of the same thing that you see. There's a little bit of repetition, but with weather and aircraft configuration, the airport configuration, and there's so many different variables that provide the change in the environment from every day.
And about how many planes a day are flying? Well, can you tell us in the United States altogether, and then in Austin itself?
I don't have specific numbers for that. In Austin, we do I would say about 2,000 operations a day, approximately, just at the main airport. We also have satellite airports north and south of Austin that we work with, Georgetown, San Marcos. So we deal with their arriving and departing aircraft. So there's a significant amount of aircraft in and out of Austin itself, but we're not one of the busiest airports in the United States.
How many air traffic controllers do you have in the terminal at one time?
In the building, on a shift, there's a minimum of 9. So we have 3 shifts, day shift and night shift. And the overnight shift, there's only 2 that work the overnight. But for the day and the night, we have a minimum of 9 controllers.
And that's very few people moving very many planes around. That's incredible.
Yes.
Who's actually in control of the skies, the pilots or the air traffic controllers?
So the pilot has the ultimate authority of the aircraft to not listen to what we instruct them to do. But from the moment that they're ready to come off the gate to the moment that they get back to wherever they're going, they listen to our instructions. We tell them where to go, what to turn, to climb, speed, and things like that. So it's to allow us to get everyone on the same page to keep aircraft separated and safe.
And as a generalization, how many planes are taking off and landing at the same time?
It all depends on the airport configuration. At Austin, with our 2 runways, we can launch both runways and land both runways at the same time. Some places have, like Newark Airport, for instance, has runways where they arrive only and depart only. So their configurations can change based on what the needs are of the airport.
Now, when the planes take off, do they take off in circle and then eventually get out of your area?
So they'll depart. So the process is you start from controller to controller to controller. So you start off in the tower, usually with an airliner. And the one controller is called the clearance delivery controller. And they'll make sure that the routing's correct and everything's good to go for the pilot to know where he's going, so that we'll both know what's going to happen along the route. Then the pilot will be ready to taxi. He'll call in the ground controller. The ground controller is responsible to get him to the runway. And then he goes to switch over to the tower controller, and the tower controller is responsible for the takeoff and landings on the runway. And once the aircraft is airborne, he'll talk to the departure controller. And the departure controller works the low altitude sector, and he'll get him up climbing. And then eventually they'll switch to the center. And the center will get him to his final altitude, and then they'll go cruise all the way down to where they're going, and then the reverse happens as they come down. They go back to the approach controller, and then they go back to the tower, and the ground, and to the gate.
So do they actually take off and circle a few times before
No.
they get out of your area? They just take off and go right?
As soon as they're airborne, they go right where they need to go.
So how many miles out are you out of control, or are they on their own?
So we're working them from gate to gate. They're going to be under our control the entire time. we'll be talking to the pilot and instructing them what to do. But as far as controlling at specific places, like in Austin, we own about 50 miles out from the airport, up to 12,000 feet. So if an aircraft is, say, transiting at 10,000 feet across Texas, we'll work that aircraft through our airspace. Additionally, if an aircraft's arriving or departing in the Austin area, they'll descend down into our airspace and we'll talk to them to the ground, or vice versa. If they're departing, we'll climb them up to the top of our airspace and then switch from controller to controller to controller.
So when the plane is actually flying over your area, you are in contact with those pilots also,
Correct.
not just the planes that are taking off and landing.
Correct.
It's very interesting. A lot of planes to be in charge of. How do delays work when you're going into different airports, like an airport your size and into larger airports?
So for us, we have what's called an en-route spacing program into Houston International. The way it works is they have this computer that determines how many planes the airport can take an hour, and basically put them in slots. So the computer will know this plane will be at the runway at this time, this plane will be here at this time. So it's predicting where each aircraft will be in order to determine what times these aircraft can be released. So when I have an aircraft going to Houston, and they get ready to taxi, I'll call over to Houston and I'll say, hey, United 1211 is ready to depart in 5 minutes. And they'll say, okay, he's released, which means he's allowed to depart. Or they'll tell me he has a 20-minute delay. So I have to hold him on the ground for 20 minutes so he can make his slot so that it's just not complete chaos of where he's going.
And what happens when you have something like a freak snowstorm like we had the other week? And I know you had snow in Austin. What happens then? Does it back everything up?
Yes, so we had quite a bit of chaos ensue at the airport last week. We weren't exactly prepared for it. Texas isn't the most prepared for freak snowstorms. So we didn't have the capabilities that we needed to de-ice aircraft efficiently. And the problem became aircraft coming off the gate and de-icing and leaving were backing up so that the aircraft that were arriving didn't have a place to go. So we had to park arriving aircraft in a waiting area until the aircraft that were at their gate could de-ice and depart. So it became a little bit chaotic, moving airplanes around, and they actually had to send extra people upstairs to the tower to help out. It didn't help that the British Airways flight we had started to de-ice. They ran out of fluid, so they had to go fill the truck back up and start over. It ended up taking 3 hours for that aircraft to de-ice.
Oh my goodness gracious! So, so you do have de-icing equipment, even though you're in Texas.
Correct.
I had a very interesting thing happen to me a few years ago when I was in Texas. We had a very freak snowstorm on New Year's Eve, and I got stuck for 3 extra days. What happens when things are backed up that many days? How long does it take for the planes to get back on a normal schedule?
It could take quite a while, depending on what their capabilities and what the needs are. If they cancel flights and things like that, our job is just to make sure that the aircraft that we deal with, we deal with them efficiently enough that we can make sure things are moving as quickly as possible. Because we know that there's delays and stuff going on with the airlines as well. So we try to make sure that things aren't backed up, at least on our end, so that they can provide the passengers aircraft to move around that they need to.
Do you have most of the flights going out of Austin, are they mostly domestic, or do you have any international flights that go out of Austin?
Most of our aircraft depart domestically. We have several international destinations in Canada, the UK, Mexico, and Germany. We're also getting another UK flight. Gatwick is coming. Amsterdam is going to be next year. There's currently talks of either Japan Airlines from Tokyo or Air France from Paris.
Do the size of the planes determine how they are handled? Like if you have a Learjet, is that handled differently than well, I'll bring up 747 since we're not going to see those anymore, one of my favorites, but does that affect how a plane is handled?
Yes, so each aircraft is characterized into, we have categories. There's category 1, 2, and 3 for runway separation, and then there's small, large, and heavy, and also a super for wake turbulence separation. So the Learjet would typically be what we call a small, and your average large would be like a 737. A heavy would be a 77, 76, 74, things of that nature, and then your super would be the A380. So each have in-trail requirements, which means I need space behind them for an aircraft to prevent them from encountering wake turbulence that the aircraft produces. So if I have, say, a 737 coming in and a Cessna would be considered a small. At the runway, I need 4 miles. Otherwise, I need 3 miles for wake turbulence. So if they're coming in on approach, I need to make sure that Cessna does not get any closer than 4 miles behind that 737 on the final approach.
And I would assume wind and weather really would affect
Yes.
things also.
Yes.
How did you get started in this amazing, exciting position?
Completely accidentally, actually. It's my dad's fault. I blame him. But I'd flown in this area in New Jersey for a long time, and I was actually very scared of air traffic control. I was always terrified to call them and ask them for help and things like that when I flew. So when my dad said, "Why don't you do
You
the
mean
job?"
actually flying a plane yourself? Oh,
Yeah.
that's exciting. So what did you start? What type of plane did you start
I
flying?
started flying little Cessnas in 1999.
And you were how old when you started this?
15 or 16.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What great parents you have. They give you that opportunity.
I was very lucky, yes.
Okay, so so you started flying planes and then?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a pilot when I was
Uh-huh.
a kid. And I was trying to do all that, and the training's very extensive and expensive, so I decided at some point to kind of pick a different career path. Along the lines of down the road after college, my dad suggested to do this job. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do it. I don't know anything about it. I'm actually kind of scared of them. But I applied anyway, and just so happened the stars aligned, and I got hired, and I accepted the job offer. So.
And how much do you, now how does this process work? Do you apply for the position first, or do you do the training first and then you're assigned to an airport?
The whole process has significantly changed since I've done it. When I started, you have to actually apply for the specific position. They open up a couple times a year what they call a vacancy, and there's different types of vacancies. There's the off the street, which means you have no experience. There's the CTI, which means you went to college for it, and then there's the military. So they may open up one of the three or a combination of the two back in the day, and I got picked up on an off the street because I had no experience.
Who do you apply to?
Federal government.
Federal
So there's
government,
a
okay.
specific, was 2152 was what we're called, 2152, and then we have dash whatever. So I applied to be 2152 on the internet back in the day, and then there was a whole long process that ensued. So it was an experience.
Very, very exciting position. How did you, where was the first airport that you were assigned to, and how were you assigned to that airport?
It was completely accidental, but I got assigned to upstate New York as a small airport called Binghamton.
Okay.
And that's where I spent my first 4.5 years with the FAA, up in the snow.
Up in the snow.
Yeah.
And you wound up in Austin. How?
I got tired of being up in the Northeast.
Okay.
I didn't really like the cold weather anymore, and I'm from the area, needed a little bit of a change. So I applied for places out on the West Coast, down in Texas, Florida, the Southeast, like Raleigh, Durham. And Austin was kind of my number one. So I really worked really hard to get down there, and I met with the manager of the facility several times. And eventually I was able to get picked up on one of the transfers that they have. And they're not often, but you get the ability to move around from time to time.
Right.
And the process is completely different now. But I got the opportunity to meet with the manager, and he got picked up.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, we're going to divulge into more details about your exciting position. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.
You made this vacation happen, cleverly merging promotions
Double points with every purchase?
and cross-referencing travel sites. Aloha! If you can ace your vacation, you can do it for retirement. Get on track with tips at aceyourretirement.org.
Oh, look, a redhead.
Staring contest.
You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Forget about it, kid. You're in the storm drain now.
But I should be in the trash can.
People threw all of us down here. Then they hosed in those rotting leaves. We're litter now. We gotta stick together. Here's our ride to the beach.
Am I litter?
Not just litter, kid. You're pollution.
What goes in our storm drains ends up on our beaches. Clean water. It's up to you, New Jersey.
Open road, here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul,
Estimated time 47 hours.
they will beg,
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
they will plead.
Deep fried butter on a stick.
But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking.
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange? beautiful 2-year-old female. She is playful, outgoing, and very social. She enjoys being petted and playing with cat toys. Nori is positive for FIV, and she is often overlooked because people don't know a lot about that. FIV cats can live long, healthy lives. Nori is a lover and gets along well with other cats. FIV cats and non-FIV cats can live together with a knowledgeable pet owner. She would also be perfect as a single cat in a household. Nori deserves a loving home and a family of her own for the holidays. Please stop by the Old Bridge Animal Shelter to meet this very special girl.
Welcome back to Travel Talk, and our special guest today once again is Mark Fellner, Air Traffic Controller Specialist from Austin, Texas. Mark, are there different types of air traffic controllers, and if yes, what type of training do they go through?
So there's 3 types of air traffic controllers that you can specialize in. So there's what we call the en route environment and then the center environment. In the en route environment, you have what's your local tower controllers. So they're responsible for the airport proper, the runways, taxiways, and a certain amount of airspace around the tower. And you have your approach and departure controllers, which are the ones that work the aircraft off the airport to a low altitude. And then the last one will be the center controllers, which control the high sectors and large amounts of airspace. And we all work together to get planes from one place to another. The different types of training there's significant different types of training for all 3 of the positions. The tower requires about 3 months of training. The en route low sector is about 2 months, and then the high altitude is about 5 months. So there's, depending on where you go, as far as your placement in the FAA, you get sent for that specific amount of training. I went for the 2 of the 3 because Austin does the tower and the low sector, so I had about 6 months worth of training in Oklahoma City.
Do you have to go back periodically for refreshers? And
No. So the way it works is you get hired and they send you to Oklahoma City for your training. It's the only academy in the United States the FAA does their training at. And you have weekly tests, monthly tests, and it's a very intense school. Then there's simulations that you have to run, and depending on how you do, they may terminate your employment or you may progress to the next level. And then once you graduate the academy, you go to wherever you're being assigned. And you go through the exact process all over again because you have to learn the local procedures. So you have to go through every position training to determine if you're going to be successful there or not. And there's times where people are not successful, even though they made it through the academy or whatnot. They could go to a very busy place and not necessarily be successful through their training program.
I would imagine. I know at any given time there are about 1 million people flying at the same time in the air around the world, which is just amazing to me that many people are up in the air at one time. I have the ultimate respect for what you do and the responsibility that you have. I can't imagine what it takes to stay in control when something goes wrong. So can you share with us what happens in an emergency? I know recently you handled a very interesting emergency, and I'd love our viewers to understand what happens. What do you do?
Well, the United States has the safest and busiest air traffic system in the world.
We're happy to hear that.
Very
Good.
proud of that we are the busiest and the safest. But there are times where things don't go as planned, and you kind of have to do what you can to help the pilot. You're not there yourself, so you have to guide them as best you can through instruction.
How do you stay in control when something goes wrong? How do you know how to react?
So the specific situation you're referring to, there was one of my fellow controllers was working an aircraft that was having mechanical issues and navigation problems, and he was unable to maintain heading and altitude because he was in the clouds and all his navigation system was failing.
Oh my goodness.
So the supervisor, knowing that I was a pilot, asked me to step in, and I took the aircraft. They switched him just to I took a specific sector, and I worked him by myself. So I specifically focused on that one airplane, and I had everyone else move their airplanes around this gentleman. So he was flying, we were trying to get him into an airport, and every time he tried to fly the approach, it was not working. His equipment wouldn't capture it. And him being in the clouds, he's not able to fly visually. He has to rely solely on the instruments.
So you became his eyes.
Yes. So we decided the best course of action would be to bring him to Austin. So we shut down our airport, the international airport, and I guided him in, basically telling him to turn and start his plane down. And eventually he got to the point where he was below the clouds and he could see the runway, and he landed safely. But he was in the clouds basically till he was about 500 feet above the ground. He couldn't see anything. and I was turning him and telling him to kind of ease the plane down and things like that.
Now, was this a plane that had many people on it, or was he?
This particular instance, it was just 2 people on board.
Amazing. So you basically saved his life? When you think about it, you actually saved his life. That's amazing that you're able to do that. I hope you got some sort of a special award for that, because that just takes such control and command presence to be able to be the eyes and ears of this gentleman up in the sky. So I hope you were acknowledged to be able to do something so special.
I was, but I definitely feel that's just part of our job. There's
Wow.
things that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and there's all of us that do remarkable things on a daily basis that we don't necessarily get the recognition for, but it happens.
Well, you're very, very humble to put it that way. Is there, does a time of day or a holiday affect what's going on as far as air traffic control?
So days like Christmas, New Year's, absolutely. The level of traffic we work is significantly decreased. So we try to allow more people off the schedule so they can spend time with their families. There are days, though, that it gets even worse. The day before Thanksgiving, notoriously the busiest travel day of the year.
Right?
So we beef up and prepare ourselves to work more airplanes than we normally would. So depending on what holiday it is, what time of year it is, there's special events that we have that we beef up our staffing to make it so that we can keep the level of safety the same,
right,
and still work the increased amount of airplanes.
Do you ever have the opportunity to meet the pilots?
So that's an interesting question, because one of the things I've noticed being in my profession and being a pilot at the same time is a lot of pilots have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. And a lot of air traffic controllers have no idea what goes on in the cockpit. Okay. So one of the things I started doing when I took over the safety position in Austin was I built this pilot community, air traffic community. So we get together and we have meetings. The pilot community, the students, instructors, the local flying groups, and we discuss ways that we can improve safety, any ideas that they have, any things that we can share with them to make everyone's life easier. So I try to organize these groups.
So this is a special project that you put together?
Yes.
That's very interesting. I would have thought that they would have all known one another, and they would have understood the workings of the tower and vice versa.
No.
So that's interesting to know that you put that together. Now, do the air traffic controllers ever get to fly in the cockpits to see what a pilot is doing from that perspective?
Yeah. So before 9/11, we would be able to what's called flash and dash.
Flash and dash.
We'd show our ID at the ticket counter, and they'd put us on the airplane. Today, with all those restrictions and things like that, that doesn't happen. We actually lost the program for quite a long time after 9/11. Yeah. I think we got it back around 2011 or something like that. So basically what you have to do is there's a ton of paperwork you have to fill out, airlines, times, flights, and everything. You submit your paperwork, they approve it, and then you can fly in the cockpit. They limit us to 2 times per year, but yeah, we can spend a trip with the pilots up in the front and
really see how they do it from their perspective.
Correct.
And do they ever come and spend time in the tower with you?
I've met a lot of pilots that have never been in any type of air traffic control facility, but there are some that go the extra mile and try to see what we do to have an understanding of how to make their lives easier and make our lives easier. It's not very common, but there are some pilots that do that.
Are all pilots and airplanes treated the same way? Everyone treated on the same level?
For the most part, yes. There's different rules and requirements for different types of aircraft and what kind of rules they're flying under. There's 2 types of there's instrument rules and there's visual rules that they can fly under, and that decreases or increases the requirement we have to keep them away from other aircraft.
If a VIP is flying in, okay, for example, if the President of the United States ever lands in Austin.
We just had that about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, how is that handled compared to the normal public like us?
So the Air Force One is what the President flies on, and the Secret Service come in and they're with us the entire time.
Are they actually in the?
Yes.
They're actually in the tower. Okay.
Yes, in the tower, in the radar room. We also have special lines that go in and they talk to the command center directly. So basically, when the aircraft is anywhere near Austin, under our control, the airport shuts down. Nobody moves from the moment that we start talking to that aircraft until the moment that the VIP is off the airport grounds.
Now, do they when the President lands, do they bring a car out to his plane? He doesn't come right up to a gate, I'm assuming.
No, so he parks in a special secluded part of the airport. They have all their security and everything set up over there. The limo, the Secret Service, sometimes the military there as well. And then he does this thing over there.
How much notice do you get before something like that is happening?
There are times where notice is very limited. for the most part, we get notice in advance.
In advance, a few days in advance at least, so you know? Or?
It depends.
Well, I'm sure they have to be very, very cautious on how that's handled.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have some favorite stories.
There are some things I've done over the years that have been pretty exciting.
Can you share anything with us?
One of my favorites, so we had a great relationship up in New York with the airport people that maintain the airport and everything. So one of my last days, they took us out to the runway, right where the runway starts, and we were standing there when planes were flying over us landing. And it was just amazing that they were 100 feet above our head coming into land, and we were standing right there. That was really an interesting experience. Other favorite stories would be, get to work the first 787 that landed in Austin.
That's exciting.
On the inaugural flight of British Airways from London. When they landed, they opened the cockpit windows and they hung a UK flag and an American flag out the window, and they taxied to the gate. Just little things like that make it more exciting for the day.
Anything special you want to share with the viewers about what is going on in the air industry in general?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure about anything other than Austin-specific things, unfortunately. I don't have a larger view of what's going on in the airline industry.
Well, I think our industry is still growing by leaps and bounds, and I applaud you for what you do every day to keep everyone safe. How long does someone in your position usually have their career? Does it last a few years? Does it last 25 years? Do people get burned out because of the stress?
So there's a minimum for retirement purposes, since we're government employees, 50 years old, I believe it is, or with minimum 20 years government experience.
Okay.
A lot of people do the 25 plus. We have people that are there 31, 32 years. So you're in it for the long haul in this type of career. You can move around a bit since you're a government employee, but for the most part, you stick with the career until you retire. And
after you retire, do you still dabble in staying in the industry at all? Is there like a jumping off point that you could go into a different division?
Some do and some don't. We have some of our retired controllers that work in our office that are in the training department now. So there's some that actually just, it's in your blood and you just stick with it.
And it is in your blood, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap up. Mark, thank you so much for your time. This was a very, very interesting show. We appreciate every moment and you're sharing all your stories. And everyone, all I could say is every day is a gift. Life is not a dress rehearsal. And everyone should just go out there and travel. Enjoy your life. And thanks again, and we hope to see you on board with the next show. Have a good day. Bon voyage, everyone.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to SaveTheFood.com.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.